Okay, so this video is on how to assemble month 7's block. This is called Sacred Heart. I don't know why they have, the place I bought these patterns from has named them. We're going to go with it, but it is a super pretty block. Let me just show it to you again so that you can see it. This is what it looks like. Okay. And so the assembly, while a little bit tedious, is actually fairly easy. And the trickiest part, I'll tell you right now, is I wasn't expecting that all these points had to come together in these corners. And mine are fairly good. They're not 100% perfect, but they're close enough. And so that's what the challenge you will probably have. Now I did a separate video on the stitch and flip method. Stitch and flip is how we're going to put those fabrics on that corner. So if you're not familiar with that, please go watch that video. But just as a quick refresher, you're going to draw a line from on one diagonal from one point to the other, and then you are going to sew. Let me put this up here. You're going to sew on this line, and then you're going to flip up this corner so that it fills beautifully right there, so that you can see that. And you're going to do that on the I always want to call it background. It's light one, or the background fabric. You're going to do that in opposite corners. So you're just going to do two corners, and they're going to be opposite corners. So let me show you one that's done so that they look like this. Okay, these will measure 3.5 inches. Didn't bring my iron over to where we're filming, so I'm finger pressing, but these will measure 3.5 inches. Okay, then you're going to repeat and do the same thing with print one with the light one squares, but this time you're going to put them at one end. So you've got 4 of these 3.5 inch squares, and you're going to sew do a stitch and flip across from each other on one end of each of them. So if you look, light one has them in opposite corners, and print one has them both at one end. Okay, so that's the big difference there. That's a lot of marking, a lot of stitching, and a lot of flipping, and don't forget I did trim both layers away so that I had that done so that there wasn't a lot of bulk. Then you're going to take your 1.5 by 3.5 inch strips, and this is print 3 and light 1, print 3, and this is the last thing you cut, and sew them together. These are going to be the segments for your center 4 patch. So we're going to take this once it's sewn, and we're going to cut this into two 1.5 inch segments. Again, I'm going to clean cut one edge, and then I'm going to measure over. And when I measure over my 3.5, I want to make sure that this line is on one of the folds and this line is straight, okay? Because we want that center square to be square. And again, I'm going to do that again. I can keep this here on the edge. This is straight to the fold, and I can cut that, okay? So I have two 1.5 by 3.5. Now, just so you know, when the squares that you're using to make these, they only, how do I want to say this? When you cut them, they only need to be 3 inches. But I say to cut them to 3.5. I don't even do that. I just take that square and cut it into strips and sew it together. They don't have to equal each other, okay? The 3.5 gives you an extra 1/2 inch. So some people say, well, you said you give us an extra inch. Well, you really are getting an extra inch. I just add that, I say 3.5 to make sure that you have some room to trim them both. So you're covered there, okay? So we have this, and then you are going to take and sew, and I thought I sewed one of those already together. You're going to take, and let's get our little board up here so that you can see this go together. So we've got this as our center of our square, okay, and then we have a background on each side. Let me get my fingers working like this. And then you're going to put one of these on each side. Isn't that pretty? Okay, so that's going to be your center 4 patch. Let me move it down a little so we have some room to work with.
9 patch.
9 patch. Sorry, my brain's not functioning this morning. I better go drink more coffee. All right, so there's your little center 9 patch. Okay, so we've done this on every block. We're going to continue to do this on every block, so there should be no mystery there. Okay, now you've done all your stitch and flip. We can put things together in rows. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put, and this when it's sewn is going to measure 3.5 inches. So I'm going to move that in a little bit. So we're going to put our main print or print number 1 on all 4 sides. I'm just laying the block out first so that when I go to sew it, I know that I'm picking up the right pieces. And again, I apologize. I didn't bring my iron over, so these aren't staying down very well, but you get the gist, right? And then we're going to come back, and these, just remember that the pretty color goes into the center, and then it'll be the outside corner too. And so these come in like this. Okay, get them sort of in here so you can see. And then I have one more that's not sewn yet. All right. All my corners are popping up. And then you're just going to sew it in rows, which is nice. But the tricky part here is when I flip this over, I do want to show you that when I go to put this together, I have a match point where these 2 corners come together. Okay? So you want to make sure, I always pinch and make sure that they're together, and I put a pin there, and then I pin. From there I go match the tops and bottoms, and then I sew. Now when I start to sew, I usually try to start on the long end, because that way if I try to sew here, oftentimes my presser foot will get stuck on the seam. If I go this direction, it's going to go the direction of the seam, and then I'm going to be able to press that open, and then those 2 will match. Okay, now when you sew the center together, your match point is going to be with the center square. And so if you press the seams according to the directions, they should, I hope, be going in opposite directions. And with that, you can actually line those up in opposite directions. Oh, I say that. I forgot, you can't do that. It's at the 1/4 inch mark that it matches, so it's down here. So you can just line that up and pin it, and you can sew that through. You can kind of see it if you press this in the opposite direction, but they're not going to lock because they're matching down at that 1/4 inch part, okay? So follow your folding and directions. Now, the real trick, and let me see if I can simulate this, is when you go to put, if this one is here and this one is here, when you go to do this one here, and then you've got this corner going in over here, sorry, like this, you've got essentially, let me show you on the finished one so you can see it. So this is, you're going to have a match point here, 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 and here. Okay, so this is going to test your ability to match things up. I sewed in rows first and got these 2 to match, and then when I came back to do this one, I made sure I matched those, and then I came in and matched these, and then went on across, and then these matched, and then again this matched, this matched, this matched. So when I said this in the beginning, your challenge with this block isn't the basic sewing. It's going when you go to connect to get this shape to form and be as closely matched as possible. Okay, I don't know which direction. Yeah, my back looks fairly good the way I have my seams pressed. Everything lays nice and flat. So if you follow the directions on that, you should be good. And that's what it looks like when it's done. Now, all I'm going to tell you is don't fret if it's not, like you can see here, I'm slightly off in a couple of them. From here, can you see that they're off? No. And that's where people are going to see the quilt. Not that many people are going to go up, you know, and do a magnification. So if this is the first time you've done stitch and flip, just focus on that. And when you put it together, get it as close as you can, and it's going to look great. Okay? So that's your block for this month, and I think you'll have fun with it. And I did look at next month's, but I forgot I think it's more stitch and flip though. So we'll get to do it a couple times. So that's your block, and that's month 7. We'll see you next time.